My name is Clara. I'm 32 years old, and until one unforgettable day, I believed I had built a happy life. I had a husband I trusted, a baby I couldn't wait to meet, and dreams that felt just within reach. But everything changed less than 24 hours before I was supposed to become a mother. The man who promised to protect me made a decision that nearly cost both my baby and me our lives. If I hadn't made one desperate phone call, neither of us would have survived, and by the time the truth finally came out, my husband had lost everything he thought he could never lose. This is my story. For months, my entire world revolved around one date circled in bright red on our kitchen calendar: the day my son would be born. Most women spend the final weeks of pregnancy decorating the nursery, folding tiny baby clothes, and imagining the first time they'll hold their child. I did those things too, but behind every smile was fear. At 34 weeks, my doctors diagnosed me with placenta accreta, a dangerous condition where the placenta grows too deeply into the uterus. They explained everything carefully, but I barely heard the medical terms. One sentence echoed inside my head: if we aren't prepared, you could bleed to death during delivery. I remember staring at the ultrasound screen while my little boy kicked happily inside me. He had no idea that his arrival into the world would become the biggest fight of my life. The hospital recommended a specialized surgical team. They wanted experienced surgeons, extra blood units on standby, and a private operating room prepared for emergencies. There was only one problem. The deposit alone was $23,000. Insurance covered part of it, but not enough. The remaining balance had to be paid before surgery. That number haunted me every single day. My husband, Garrick, promised we would figure it out together. "We're a team," he told me while rubbing my shoulders one evening. "I'll never let anything happen to you." Back then, I believed every word. Looking back now, I wonder how many lies he had already told me before that night. Because while I was sacrificing everything for our future, he was preparing to sacrifice me. For 6 exhausting months, I worked every freelance drafting project I could find. I completed architectural sketches late into the night. I revised blueprints until my eyes burned. Some mornings I barely slept 3 hours before opening my laptop again. Pregnancy made every task harder. My back constantly ached. My ankles swelled until walking hurt. Sometimes my baby kicked so hard I had to stop typing for several minutes just to breathe through the discomfort. Still, I kept going. Every payment went directly into a protected medical account. I stopped buying coffee. I canceled every streaming subscription. I sold expensive handbags I hadn't touched in years. Even my grandmother's jewelry stayed locked away, because I wanted one emergency option left if everything went wrong. When friends invited us to dinner, I always declined. "We're saving for the baby," I'd say with a smile. That wasn't completely true. I was saving for survival. Meanwhile, Garrick seemed strangely relaxed. Whenever I worried about money, he would laugh. "You stress too much. We'll be fine. I've got everything under control." Those words sounded comforting then. Today they make me sick. The day before my scheduled C-section finally arrived, I woke up earlier than usual. The nursery glowed softly beneath the morning sunlight. A tiny stuffed animal sat perfectly arranged on a shelf. A white rocking chair waited beside the crib. I gently placed my hand on my stomach. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "we'd finally meet." My son kicked gently. It felt like he was answering me. I smiled through nervous tears. Everything had led to this moment. All I needed to do was transfer the money to the hospital. I carried my laptop into the living room and logged into my bank account. The page loaded. I stared at the screen. Then I blinked. I refreshed the page. My heartbeat sped up. No, that couldn't be right. I refreshed again. The numbers didn't change. Balance, $0. Zero. Not 23,000. Not 22,000. Nothing. My entire body went cold. I checked the recent transactions. There it was. One outgoing wire transfer. $23,000. Completed 2 hours earlier. The recipient wasn't the hospital. I couldn't breathe. There had to be some mistake. Maybe someone hacked the account. Maybe the bank made an error.
Maybe, Garrick?
My voice echoed through the house. No answer. Garrick. This time it sounded more like a scream. A few seconds later, he walked calmly downstairs wearing an expensive gray coat. He adjusted the sleeve of his watch before looking at me. What? I turned the laptop toward him. Where is the money? He looked at the screen. His expression never changed. No surprise, no confusion, no panic. Only mild annoyance. I used it. I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because my brain refused to believe what I just heard. What do you mean, you used it? He sighed heavily. Sienna needed help. His younger sister. Of course. Sienna had spent most of her adult life chasing quick money. She quit jobs every few months. She borrowed cash she never repaid. She constantly blamed everyone else whenever something went wrong. Garrick rescued her every single time. But never like this. Never with my life. I stood up so quickly the chair nearly fell backward. Tell me you're joking. I'm not. Where is my surgery money? He folded his arms. Sienna owes some dangerous people. She got involved in underground gambling. They threatened her. So I paid them. I felt like the room was spinning. You gave her $23,000. He nodded. A's alone. I couldn't believe he actually expected those words to make me feel better. Alone. You emptied my medical account. Our medical account. He corrected. No, I replied quietly. I earned every single dollar. I worked 6 months while carrying your child. I skipped meals. I worked until 2 in the morning. I sacrificed everything. His expression hardened. Oh, she's family. I stared at him. So am I. He shrugged. She would have died. My voice cracked. So will I. Silence filled the room. I waited. Surely now he would understand. Surely he would apologize. Surely he would promise to get the money back. Instead, he rolled his eyes. You're exaggerating. A woman gives birth every day. The words hit harder than a slap. You know exactly what my doctors said. They're just being cautious. No, they said I could bleed to death. They always talk worst-case scenarios. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't ignorance. This wasn't denial. This was indifference. I grabbed his arm. Call Sienna. Tell her to return every cent. I don't care how. I need that money today. He gently pulled his arm away. She already paid the debt, so it's gone. Gone. One simple word. My son's chance. My chance. Gone. I felt something inside me break. For years I'd ignored little warning signs. The excuses. The selfish decisions. The lies. The manipulation. Every time someone criticized Garrick, I defended him. Especially my mother. She never trusted him. Not once. When I introduced them 5 years earlier, she'd smiled politely through dinner. The moment he left, she looked straight into my eyes. That man doesn't love you. I got angry. I accused her of judging him unfairly. She simply replied, I hope I'm wrong. Over time, Garrick convinced me my mother was controlling. She wants to run your life. She'll never accept me. You need to choose. Little by little, I stopped calling her. Holiday visits became shorter. The phone calls became rare. Eventually, months passed between conversations. I thought I was protecting my marriage. And now I realized I'd been isolating myself from the only person who truly loved me. Before I could speak again, a sharp pain exploded through my stomach. I grabbed the edge of the table. Another pain came seconds later, much stronger. I gasped. No, not now. It was too early. Another contraction hit. I bent forward, barely able to stand. Garrick looked irritated instead of concerned. What's wrong now? I couldn't answer. Then I felt warmth spreading down my legs. My water had broken. The clear liquid soaked the hardwood floor beneath me. Fear, unlike anything I'd ever known, flooded my body. The baby was coming, 1 day early, without the surgery, without the money. without any plan. I looked directly into my husband's eyes. For the first time in my life, I was truly afraid of the man standing in front of me, and I had no idea that the next few minutes would completely destroy the life he had spent years carefully building. I dropped to my knees as another contraction ripped through my body. The pain stole every breath I had. One hand clutched my stomach while the other reached toward Garrick. "Please," I whispered. "Call 911. He didn't move. Instead, he glanced down at the expensive watch on his wrist like he was late for an important meeting. "I can't deal with this right now." But those words barely registered because another wave of pain crashed over me. "Our son," I cried. "Please." He let out an irritated sigh. "Clara, you're panicking. Babies aren't born the second labor starts," my doctor said. "Doctors always exaggerate." "I need the hospital." "You'll be fine." His voice was so calm that it almost sounded rehearsed. Then he reached for his car keys. I stared at him in disbelief. "What are you doing?" "I'm going to check on Sienna." I honestly thought I'd misheard him. "You're leaving." He shrugged. "She's having a breakdown. I'll come back later." I felt tears mixing with sweat as another contraction forced me onto my side. I could die. "So could she?" "She's your sister. I'm your wife." He looked at me for several silent seconds. There wasn't even guilt in his eyes anymore, only impatience. "You always make everything about yourself." Those words shattered whatever remained of my marriage. I wasn't looking at the man I fell in love with. I was looking at a complete stranger. Then he said something I will remember for the rest of my life. "If you're really worried, take an aspirin or something to slow the contractions." I couldn't even respond. The suggestion was so unbelievably stupid that my mind simply froze. Before I found my voice again, he opened the front door, walked outside, closed it behind him. A few seconds later, I heard his car start. Then the engine faded into the distance. He left. He actually left. The silence inside the house felt enormous. Only my crying and uneven breathing remained. I lay there on the hardwood floor, surrounded by baby clothes, nursery decorations, and dreams that were collapsing around me. For several seconds I simply stared at the ceiling. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Not to us. Not to our baby. Another contraction answered that thought immediately. I screamed. My phone had fallen beside the couch. It looked impossibly far away. I dragged myself across the floor inch by inch. Every movement felt like someone was tearing my body apart. When I finally grabbed it, my hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. My thumb hovered over the emergency call button. 911. The logical choice. The obvious choice. But another name appeared in my mind. Mom. For years I had ignored her calls. For years, I'd believed Garrick every time he said she wanted to control my life. Whenever she questioned him, he called her manipulative. Whenever she offered advice, he called her toxic. Whenever she invited me to dinner, he somehow created another excuse. Slowly, almost without realizing it, I'd lost my mother. Or maybe I'd allowed someone else to steal her from me. Now, lying on the floor while my baby fought to enter the world, I realized there was only one person who had always tried to protect me. I pressed her contact. The phone rang once. Twice. She answered before the third ring. Clara. Her voice sounded exactly the same as I remembered. Strong, confident, calm. But beneath that calm, I heard immediate concern. "You never call this early." I tried to speak. Nothing came out except sobbing. "Clara." Her tone changed instantly. "What happened?" I could barely breathe. "He took everything." Or silence. Then, "What are you talking about?" "Garrick." I emptied the surgery account. "He gave the money to Sienna." I'm in labor." Another contraction forced me to stop talking. I screamed so loudly the phone slipped from my ear. When I picked it up again, my mother wasn't crying. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't asking questions. She had become terrifyingly calm. Listen carefully. Her voice sounded like a commander giving battlefield instructions. Are you bleeding? A little. As the baby moving. Wes, can you unlock the front door? I think so. Good. I'm sending an ambulance. I don't have the money anymore. You won't need it. What? You won't need it. She spoke each word with absolute certainty. I've already called someone. What? My private trauma response team. I blinked. What do you mean? You forgot what I do for a living. She wasn't just a lawyer. She was one of the most successful corporate litigators in Chicago. Her clients included billion-dollar companies, politicians, and celebrities. She prepared for emergencies the way generals prepared for war. I'm also calling the hospital director. You know him. I've represented his board for 8 years. I suddenly realized how much of my mother's life Garrick had erased from mine. He'd convinced me she was nothing but an overbearing woman obsessed with money. He never mentioned the hundreds of lives she'd quietly helped over the years. Stay awake, she ordered. I'm leaving my office now. Mum, I'm coming. The call ended. For the first time all day, I didn't feel completely alone. I crawled toward the front door. Every inch felt impossible. The contractions were getting closer together. The pain became sharper, hotter, more violent. Finally, I unlocked the door before collapsing against the wall. Outside, the dark clouds rolled across the afternoon sky. Rain began falling. The weather suddenly matched exactly how I felt inside. 5 minutes later, sirens. Not one, several. Blue and red lights flashed through the windows. Heavy footsteps rushed toward the house. The front door flew open. 3 paramedics entered carrying equipment far more advanced than any ambulance I'd ever seen. One immediately knelt beside me. Clara. I nodded weakly. We've got you. Within seconds, they were checking my blood pressure, monitoring the baby's heartbeat, starting an IV, and preparing medication. Everything happened with incredible speed. Another woman entered behind them wearing a dark business suit instead of medical clothing. I recognized her instantly. My mother. She rushed across the room. The moment she saw me lying on the floor, her face turned completely white. For just 1 second, the fearless attorney disappeared. She became only a mother. She knelt beside me, gently brushing wet hair away from my face.
Oh, sweetheart.
I'm so sorry. I burst into tears. I'm scared. She squeezed my hand tightly. I know. You don't have to be scared anymore. I'm here. Those 4 words gave me more comfort than anything Garrick had said in years. As the medical team prepared to move me onto the stretcher, my mother quietly looked around the living room. Her eyes stopped on my open laptop, then the banking screen, then the empty account balance, then the puddle of water where my labor had begun. Finally, she looked toward the open front door through which Garrick had walked away. Her expression changed. The warmth vanished. The legendary courtroom attorney returned. Her eyes became cold, calculating, focused. She turned to one of the men standing behind her. He wore a tailored black suit and carried a leather briefcase. David. Yes. I want every financial record connected to Garrick frozen and preserved. Immediately. Yes, ma'am. Also hire every investigator available. I want to know exactly where my daughter's money went. And I want answers before sunrise. Understood. She looked back at me. Clara, I nodded weakly. I promise you something. What? The man who abandoned you today, she paused, has absolutely no idea what he started. As the ambulance doors closed and the sirens echoed through the streets, I held my mother's hand tightly. I didn't know whether my son and I would survive the night. But one thing had already changed forever. For the first time in 5 years, Garrick no longer controlled my life, and before this nightmare ended, he was going to learn exactly what happened when he underestimated the wrong family. The ambulance raced through downtown Chicago, with its sirens screaming into the afternoon traffic. Every bump in the road sent another wave of pain through my body. One paramedic stayed beside me, carefully watching both my vital signs and my baby's heartbeat. Another adjusted the IV while speaking quietly into a radio. 36-week pregnancy. Placenta accreta, active labor. Possible hemorrhage risk. Trauma team standing by. Hearing those words spoken aloud made everything feel terrifyingly real. This wasn't just a difficult pregnancy anymore. This was a fight for our lives. I squeezed my mother's hand as another contraction forced me to close my eyes. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She looked at me with confusion. "For what?" "I should have listened to you." She gently brushed my hair away from my forehead. "This isn't the time for regrets. But you warned me. You saw exactly who Garrick was. And I chose him anyway." My mother gave me a small, sad smile. "I never wanted to be right." Those words broke something inside me. For years I had convinced myself that Garrick truly loved me. Whenever he ignored my feelings, I blamed stress. Whenever he chose Sienna over me, I blamed family loyalty. Whenever he lied, I blamed misunderstandings. Now every excuse sounded ridiculous. The signs had always been there. I just refused to see them. The ambulance pulled beneath the emergency entrance where nearly 20 people were already waiting. Doctors, nurses, surgeons, blood specialists. Even the hospital director himself stood outside. As soon as the doors opened, the medical team rushed me inside. Everything moved so quickly that I barely understood what was happening. Bright white lights flashed above me as the bed rolled down endless hallways. Someone explained the surgical risks again. Another nurse asked me to sign emergency consent forms. A doctor checked my baby's heartbeat. "It's dropping." The words sent panic through the room. "We're out of time. Move now." Suddenly everyone started running. The operating room doors flew open. Cold air rushed across my face. Machines beeped from every direction. Blue surgical gowns surrounded me. One anesthesiologist leaned close. "Clara, I need you to stay calm. We're going to take care of you." I wanted to believe him. I truly did. But all I could think about was one question. Would I ever meet my son? The anesthesia slowly began taking effect. My vision blurred. The voices around me became distant. The last thing I saw before falling unconscious was my mother standing outside the operating room doors. She wasn't crying. She wasn't afraid. She looked exactly like she did before entering a courtroom. Focused, patient, dangerously determined. While surgeons fought to save my life, my mother declared war. She walked into one of the hospital conference rooms where her assistant, David, already had 2 laptops open. 3 investigators joined them within minutes. "So," my mother began calmly. "Tell me everything." David opened the first report. "Garrick transferred exactly $23,000 at 9:12 this morning. Recipient: a private account belonging to his sister, Sienna Brooks. After that, within 43 minutes, the money disappeared again." My mother narrowed her eyes. "Where did it go?" David clicked another document onto the screen. "I wasn't used to pay gambling debts." "What?" "It purchased a luxury SUV." The room became completely silent. One investigator slid photographs across the table. A brand new black luxury vehicle, still sitting in the dealership parking lot, reserved under Sienna's name. My mother's expression never changed. "Continue." David nodded. "We also discovered there were never any dangerous loan sharks. No criminal reports. No police investigations. No emergency withdrawals. So the gambling story was completely fabricated." One investigator spoke quietly. "It appears Garrick helped his sister buy the vehicle." My mother's fingers slowly tightened around her coffee cup. "He knowingly stole money intended for emergency childbirth surgery." "Wes." "He lied about why." "Wes." "He abandoned his wife during labor." "Less." "And he expected nobody would question any of it." David slowly nodded. "That appears to be his plan." My mother stood. "Then let's ruin that plan." Several hours later, I slowly opened my eyes. Everything hurt. My throat felt dry. Machines surrounded my bed. For a few terrifying seconds, I couldn't remember where I was. Then everything came rushing back. The surgery, Garrick, the money, my baby. A nurse immediately smiled. Congratulations. You have a beautiful little boy. My eyes instantly filled with tears. He's alive, very healthy, 7 pounds. He had everyone worried for a little while, but he's doing wonderfully now. I covered my face and cried harder than I ever had before. Not because I was afraid anymore, because we survived. A few moments later, a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket was placed gently into my arms. He looked unbelievably peaceful. Tiny fingers, tiny nose, tiny breaths. He opened one sleepy eye before wrapping his little hand around my finger. At that exact moment, nothing else mattered. Not the money, not the betrayal, not even Garrick. Every sacrifice suddenly felt worth it. "Hello," I whispered. "I'm your mommy. I promised I'd protect you. And I always will." Behind me, I heard quiet footsteps. My mother entered carrying flowers. But something about her expression had changed. She looked satisfied, almost relieved. "How are you feeling?" she asked softly. "Sore, but alive." She smiled. That's all I wanted. She gently kissed my forehead before looking down at her grandson. "He's perfect." We sat together in silence for several minutes. Finally, I looked at her. "You found something?" She nodded. "I did. It wasn't gambling debt, was it?" "No." I already knew the answer before she spoke. He lied. She carefully placed a folder onto my bedside table. "I don't want you reading this today. You need rest. But when you're ready..." She gently touched the folder. "Everything you believed about your husband is inside." I stared at the thick stack of documents. "What do you mean? The $23,000 wasn't used to save Sienna." "So where did it go?" My mother looked directly into my eyes. "They used your surgery money to buy her dream luxury SUV for several seconds." I couldn't breathe. I wasn't shocked anymore. Shock had already passed. What replaced it was something colder, something stronger: resolve. The woman who entered the hospital that afternoon had been frightened, heartbroken, and desperate. The woman lying in that hospital bed now was someone entirely different. Because Garrick hadn't just betrayed me. He had nearly orphaned his own son before he was even born. And for that, I wasn't going to forgive him. Not now. Not ever. What I didn't realize yet was that buying that SUV would become the biggest mistake Garrick had ever made. Because every payment, every text message, every lie, and in every hidden account had just given my mother exactly what she needed to destroy him. Holding my son for the first time should have erased every painful memory from the previous 24 hours. For a little while, it almost did. I couldn't stop staring at his tiny face. His fingers wrapped tightly around mine, as if he already trusted me to keep every promise I had silently made. "I'll never let anyone hurt you," I whispered. "I couldn't protect us yesterday, but I promise I'll protect you from now on." Tears rolled down my cheeks. Not tears of fear, not anymore. These were tears of gratitude, against every terrible possibility we had survived. But survival was only the beginning. The real battle hadn't even started. The next morning, I woke to quiet voices outside my hospital room. My mother stood in the hallway speaking with David. They immediately stopped talking when they noticed I was awake. "Morning," my mother said gently. "How's my grandson?" "Hungry." I laughed softly. "I guess that's a good sign. It's an excellent sign." She smiled before walking inside. But I noticed the thick folder still resting under her arm. She hadn't forgotten. Neither had I. "Tell me everything." She looked toward David. He quietly closed the hospital room door. "Are you sure?" my mother asked. "You've been through enough. I need to know." She slowly placed the folder on my bed. "I hired 3 forensic accountants, 2 private investigators, and 1 digital analyst." I couldn't help smiling. Only you would build an entire investigation overnight. She smiled back. When someone tries to kill my daughter, I don't believe in waiting. She opened the folder. The $23,000 reached Sienna's account exactly 43 minutes after Garrick transferred it. I know. But it never stayed there. She turned another page. It immediately went to a luxury dealership. Another photo slid across the bed. The same black luxury SUV. Beautiful. Expensive. Purchased with the money meant to save my life. I stared at it without speaking. My mother continued. We visited the dealership this morning. You did. The manager cooperated immediately. Why? She gave a small smile. He recognized my name. Oh, of course he did. When my mother wanted answers, people usually gave them. The salesman confirmed Garrick and Sienna arrived together yesterday. They looked. She paused, excited. David handed me printed security photos. There they were. My husband, his sister, laughing, smiling, taking pictures beside the vehicle. While I lay at home preparing for emergency surgery. They celebrated. I felt physically sick. They knew. I asked quietly. They knew exactly where the money came from. David nodded. The salesman overheard Sienna joking. What did she say? He hesitated. My mother answered instead. She laughed and said, a baby won't remember whether it was born in a fancy hospital anyway. The room became completely silent. My hands started shaking, not from sadness, from anger, pure, uncontrollable anger. My mother quietly reached across the bed and closed the folder. That's not even the worst part. I looked at her. There is more. So much more. David opened another file. Our investigators reviewed Garrick's finances over the last 5 years. My stomach tightened. What did you find? He has secret accounts. How many? 7. I blinked. 7. None were disclosed during your marriage. I stared at him.
No.
I couldn't. He did. My mother slid several bank statements toward me. Every page contained transfers, cash withdrawals, hidden deposits, money disappearing without explanation. I don't understand. David spoke quietly. Pa, I wasn't broke. What? The entire time you worked nights. The entire time you skipped meals. The entire time you believed your family couldn't afford medical care. He had more than $300,000 hidden. Everything inside me went numb. 300,000. He had enough money to pay for my surgery over 10 times. He simply chose not to. I couldn't breathe. So, I whispered. He let me work until I nearly collapsed. Yes. He watched me cry over medical bills. Wes! He knew I might die. Les! And he still stole my savings. Nobody answered. Nobody needed to. The silence said everything. That afternoon my phone finally rang. The screen displayed one name, Garrick. I stared at it for several seconds. He was calling now. Nearly 24 hours after abandoning me, I answered. Hello. His voice sounded almost cheerful. Hey. How are things? How are things? I looked down at the surgical bandages covering my abdomen, at the IV connected to my arm, at the newborn sleeping peacefully beside me. Then I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh someone makes after realizing they married a monster.
Oh, I'm alive.
Good. That was all he said.
Good. No apology.
No concern. Nothing. Where are you? I asked. Still helping Sienna.
Really?
Yeah, she's been pretty emotional. I closed my eyes. I almost died. I heard you had the surgery, so everything worked out. As if surviving emergency surgery was just another item crossed off a checklist. Our son is here. That's great. His voice carried no excitement whatsoever. I'll probably visit tomorrow, probably. Visit. As though we were distant relatives, not his wife and newborn child. Before hanging up, he casually asked, By the way, Mom didn't make a scene, did she? I almost smiled. He still had no idea. No, I answered calmly. She hasn't made a scene. Yet 2 hours later, he walked into the hospital carrying flowers. Cheap flowers. the kind sold near grocery store entrances. He looked tired, but not guilty, never guilty. He kissed my forehead as though nothing unusual had happened. Hey, I didn't kiss him back. He looked down at our son. He's cute. Cute. That was his entire reaction to becoming a father. Then he noticed my mother sitting quietly in the corner. His smile disappeared. Miriam, Garrick. Her voice remained perfectly calm. Too calm. I heard Clara's surgery went well. It did. Wonderful. Another long silence filled the room. Finally, Garrick cleared his throat. So, when are you both coming home? Before I could answer, my mother stood. I think we should discuss something first. He looked confused. What? She walked toward him carrying only one sheet of paper. Not the entire investigation. Just one document. The dealership receipt. Or she handed it to him. He glanced down. His face instantly lost all color. He stopped speaking. My mother smiled politely. I believe this belongs to you. She looked from the receipt to my face, back to my mother. I can explain. I'm sure you can. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. His breathing became faster.
It wasn't my idea.
Sienna. My mother's voice became ice cold. Careful. Your next sentence determines whether this conversation stays civil. For the first time since I'd met him, I watched Garrick become afraid. Real fear. The confident man who controlled every conversation suddenly couldn't even finish a sentence, because he had finally realized something. He wasn't dealing with the wife he manipulated for years anymore. He was facing the woman who had spent decades destroying powerful people inside courtrooms. And unlike me, my mother had absolutely no interest in giving him a second chance. He still believed he could talk his way out of it. He had no idea that the evidence waiting inside my mother's briefcase would completely destroy every lie he had ever told. Garrick stood frozen in the middle of my hospital room, still holding the cheap bouquet he had brought as if flowers could somehow erase what he had done. The receipt trembled in his hand. For the first time since I had known him, he looked completely cornered. I can explain, he repeated. My mother folded her arms. I'm listening. He swallowed hard before forcing out a nervous laugh. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. No, my mother asked, so how exactly was it supposed to happen? He glanced toward me. Oh, Clara, I was going to replace the money. When? He hesitated. I just needed some time. I couldn't stay silent anymore. Time. I stared directly into his eyes. You stole my surgery money less than 24 hours before my C-section. You abandoned me while I was in labor. You told me to take an aspirin. And now you want me to believe you were going to fix everything. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because there was no explanation. No excuse. No version of the story that could make any of this acceptable. My mother stepped closer. The dealership confirmed you paid cash. The security cameras recorded both of you celebrating. The salesman heard Sienna joke that your son's life wasn't worth $23,000. His face turned pale. You investigated me. She gave him a cold smile. No. I investigated the man who almost killed my daughter. Garrick tried changing his tone. He looked at me with fake sadness. Clara, you know I love you. Those words almost made me laugh. Love? Love didn't abandon a pregnant woman on the floor. Love didn't steal life, saving surgery money. Love didn't choose a luxury SUV over a wife and unborn child. You don't love me. My voice was calm. You loved having someone you could control. His expression hardened. You've changed. No. I finally woke up. The room fell silent again. Then David quietly walked inside carrying another folder. He handed it to my mother. She didn't even look at it before speaking. Would you like to tell Clara about your 7 hidden bank accounts? Garrick's eyes widened. How did you? Or should I tell her? I watched every ounce of confidence disappear from his face. You searched my finances. Every transaction. Every account. every investment, every loan. She slowly opened the folder. For 5 years. You hid more than $300,000. I looked at Garrick. His silence confirmed everything. You watched me work until midnight. You watched me sell my jewelry. You watched me cry because I thought we couldn't afford my surgery. His eyes stayed fixed on the floor. I was protecting our future. Our future. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You hid enough money to save my life 10 times over. He finally looked up. It wasn't that simple. No. What exactly was complicated? He didn't answer, because there was no answer. My mother handed David another document. Serve him. David calmly removed several legal papers from his briefcase. Garrick frowned. What is this? A temporary financial injunction. His face tightened. What? Every known bank account under your name has been frozen. His breathing became uneven. You can't do that. We already did. You have no authority. My mother smiled slightly. The judge disagreed. He quickly pulled out his phone. His fingers moved frantically across the screen. One account after another. Each one displayed the same message. Assisio unt empo or rl rest sted. He tried another, and another nothing. His face became ghostly white. What did you do? I protected my daughter's future. He looked completely panicked now. My business payroll? My investments? My credit lines? Correct. You stole emergency medical funds. You committed financial fraud. You abandoned your pregnant wife during a medical emergency. Were ensuring nothing else disappears. He looked at me desperately. Tell her to stop. I slowly shook my head. No. The next morning, the story exploded. Apparently someone at the luxury dealership had anonymously leaked the surveillance footage. Within hours, local news stations were reporting on a businessman accused of stealing emergency childbirth funds to buy his sister a luxury SUV. Social media spread the story faster than anyone expected. People were furious. Thousands of comments appeared online. How could anyone do this? He abandoned his wife during labor. That man belongs in prison. By noon, reporters had gathered outside Garrick's office. Television cameras waited near his home. His phone never stopped ringing. Only now, nobody wanted to help him. His business partners began distancing themselves. Several clients immediately canceled contracts. One investor publicly announced he was ending all business relationships with Garrick. Then came an even bigger blow. David entered my hospital room carrying fresh documents. We received confirmation. Confirmation of what? I asked. Garrick has officially been removed as CEO. I blinked. What? The company's board held an emergency meeting this morning. They voted unanimously. He no longer has access to the company. Everything was happening faster than I imagined. One terrible decision. One stolen bank transfer. One abandoned wife. And the empire he'd spent years building was collapsing. 2 that evening. Another unexpected visitor arrived. Sienna. She no longer looked confident. Her expensive designer clothes couldn't hide the fear on her face. She stood quietly beside my hospital bed. She couldn't finish her sentence. Finally, she burst into tears. I'm sorry. I simply looked at her. I never wanted this. I raised an eyebrow. You never wanted the SUV. She lowered her head. I thought Garrick would replace the money. The same lie he told me. She nodded slowly. I didn't believe you were actually in danger. I looked toward my sleeping son. Hay almost grew up without a mother. Her crying became louder. I know. No. I interrupted quietly. You know now, but when you accepted those keys, you didn't care. She couldn't deny it, because it was true. After several minutes of silence, she carefully removed a set of car keys from her purse. I returned it. I frowned. What? The SUV. I gave it back this morning. They refunded almost everything. She placed a certified check on the bedside table. $22,400. I know it isn't the full amount. but it's everything they returned. I stared at the check, then back at Sienna. This doesn't erase what happened. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. She quietly stood. I only wanted to do one decent thing before everything falls apart. She walked toward the door before stopping. Garrick blames everyone except himself. He still thinks he'll win. After she left, my mother quietly smiled. He still doesn't understand. What? Winning stopped being possible the moment he walked out that front door. I looked down at my son sleeping peacefully in my arms. For the first time since all of this began, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about justice. Real justice. The kind that couldn't be bought. The kind that couldn't be manipulated. And the next morning, Garrick was finally going to stand in a courtroom where neither money nor lies could save him. He still believed he had one last chance. He was about to discover that the truth was far more powerful than anything he had ever stolen. The courtroom was completely silent when I walked inside. Just 5 days earlier, I had been lying on my living room floor, convinced that my son and I might never survive. Now I stood beside my attorney, beside my mother, beside the people who had refused to let the truth stay buried. Across the room sat Garrick. He looked nothing like the confident man who had walked out on me during labor. His expensive suits were gone. The arrogant smile had disappeared. Dark circles surrounded his eyes, and his shoulders slumped as though the weight of every lie had finally caught up with him. For the first time in years, he looked afraid. His attorney quietly shuffled through several folders while avoiding eye contact with our side of the courtroom. Even he knew this case wasn't going well. The judge entered, and everyone stood. After a few formalities, my attorney presented the evidence. Every bank transfer, every hidden account, every security camera recording from the luxury dealership, every phone record, every witness statement, every medical report showing how close my son and I had come to dying. The courtroom screens displayed the dealership surveillance footage. There was Garrick, laughing, shaking hands with the salesman, watching Sienna pose proudly beside her brand new luxury SUV. The timestamp appeared in the corner of the screen. It was recorded less than 3 hours before I went into labor. The next video showed hospital security footage. My mother running beside my stretcher. A doctor's rushing me into emergency surgery. The difference between those two videos was impossible to ignore. One family celebrated. The other fought to stay alive. Then my medical specialist testified. He explained exactly how dangerous my condition had been. If Mrs. Brooks had arrived even 30 minutes later, he said calmly, there is a very real possibility that both mother and child would have died. The courtroom fell silent. I looked toward Garrick. He lowered his head. He still couldn't look at me. Next came the financial investigators. They carefully explained how Garrick had hidden more than $300,000 during our marriage, while allowing me to believe we couldn't afford life-saving treatment. Every document was verified, every transfer was traced, every lie was exposed. Finally, the judge turned toward Garrick. Do you wish to make a statement? For several seconds, he remained silent. Then he slowly stood. I made mistakes. That was how he described everything. Mistakes, not betrayal. Not abandonment, not theft, just mistakes. He looked toward me. I never wanted Clara to get hurt. I met his eyes for the first time since the hospital. You already did. He swallowed. I thought everything would work out. I shook my head. You didn't think about me at all. You didn't think about our son. You only thought about yourself. His shoulders collapsed. For once, he had nothing left to say. After reviewing all the evidence, the judge delivered the decision. Our marriage was officially dissolved. I received full legal and physical custody of my son. Garrick was ordered to pay substantial financial compensation for the stolen medical funds, emergency expenses, and additional damages related to his financial misconduct. subject to the court's findings. The court also referred evidence of the financial transactions to the appropriate authorities for any further investigation they considered necessary. Every hidden account became part of the financial settlement. Everything he had hidden for years was no longer hidden. When the hearing ended, Garrick remained seated alone. No friends, no business partners, no family. Even Sienna stayed away. He even spent years believing loyalty could be purchased. In the end, he discovered that people who stand beside you only because of money disappear the moment the money is gone. Several weeks later, my son and I finally moved into our new home. It wasn't the largest house. It wasn't the fanciest, but every room felt peaceful. For the first time in years, I slept without fear. Every morning I carried my son onto the back porch while the sun rose over the neighborhood. He laughed whenever birds landed nearby. His tiny smile reminded me that even after unimaginable pain, life still finds a way to begin again. One afternoon, my mother joined us for lunch. She watched her grandson crawl across the living room before smiling at me. "You look different." "I feel different." "How?" I looked around our quiet home. "I finally understand something." She waited patiently. "I spent years trying to save someone who never planned to save me. But the people who truly loved me, they never stopped fighting for me." My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You finally see your worth." I smiled. "I do." Months later, I heard that Garrick had sold nearly everything he owned. His business was gone. His reputation had been destroyed. Most of the people who once surrounded him had quietly disappeared. Ironically, the only thing he couldn't buy back was trust. As for me, I didn't spend another minute celebrating his downfall. Real revenge isn't watching someone suffer. Real revenge is building a life so peaceful that the people who hurt you no longer have the power to disturb it. Every time I watch my son laugh, every birthday, every family photo, every quiet evening, I'm reminded that we survived, not because of luck, but because one phone call changed everything. The man who abandoned us believed he was ending my future. Instead, he destroyed his own. And that's the greatest justice life could have given me. Thank you so much for spending your time with me and listening to my story. If this story touched your heart, reminded you to value the people who truly love you, or showed you the importance of standing up for yourself, I hope you'll carry that lesson with you. Never ignore the warning signs. Never allow anyone to convince you that your life is worth less than their convenience. And never be afraid to ask for help when you need it most. Sometimes one phone call, one brave decision, can completely change your future. Thank you again for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories just like this. Until next time, take care of yourself and never stop believing that justice always finds its way. To story summary, Clara, a 32-year-old expectant mother with a life-threatening pregnancy complication, spent months saving $23,000 for her emergency C-section. Just one day before giving birth, her husband, Garrick, secretly stole every dollar and gave it to his irresponsible sister, claiming she needed the money to pay dangerous gambling debts. When Clara went into labor, Garrick abandoned her and told her to take an aspirin before leaving to comfort his sister. In desperation, Clara called her estranged mother, Miriam, a powerful attorney who immediately sent a private trauma team that saved both Clara and her baby. An investigation uncovered Garrick's lies, hidden bank accounts, and the truth that the money had actually been used to buy his sister a luxury SUV. The evidence destroyed his reputation, ended his marriage, cost him his business, and left him facing serious financial consequences. Clara gained full custody of her son and finally found peace, proving that true justice comes not from hatred, but from rebuilding a life free from betrayal. Story lesson: Real love is shown through sacrifice, honesty, and protection, not empty promises. Never ignore repeated acts of selfishness or manipulation, especially from those closest to you. Trust the people who consistently prove they care through their actions. Most importantly, know your worth. Walking away from betrayal isn't weakness. It is often the first step toward a stronger, happier, and more peaceful life.